Let's talk about how metaphors can be helpful and harmful in our pursuit of truth, of discovering literal and metaphorical treasures, and in problem solving and all sorts of aspects of our life and lifelong learning, and just learning to think more clearly and to see things that we might otherwise miss. And this is part of a series I'm doing where I'm talking about books and authors from the past and the recent past that have really left a mark on me and that have shaped the way that I go about observing and thinking and pursuing clear thinking. And so the book today that I want to talk about is one, as with almost all the books I talk about, I don't necessarily agree with or endorse all of the person's ideas and the like, but they have some things that stuck with me. And this one is a guy named George Lakoff, I believe a cognitive psychologist by training. I think that's the case. And he wrote a book called The Metaphors We Live By. It came out, I believe, around 1980. And so it's been around for longer than some people watching this have lived. And for most people who are watching this, well, if you were around then, you were younger. We were younger. And so I read this later. By the time I came across this book, it had been out 15 or 20 years. But I was intrigued by it because what he does in the book, George Lakoff, is he says that he talks about how we use different metaphors to make sense of things in our life. And the metaphors can shape the things we see and the things that we miss. So as an example, we all have to deal in a world where time exists. But some people will use the metaphor of time as money. I've spent too much time. This cost me too much time. Notice how those words are kind of money, financial terminology. And so we're framing time as money or time as a kind of monetary thing, metaphorically speaking. Or I've invested my time in this. But what if you shifted this? What if you thought of time in terms of a river as time flows by? Or as the slow-moving river. Sometimes time seems to flow less quickly than at other times, or when we are in the rapids of life and things are, moving really wildly. So you shift your metaphor, and it's the exact same topic, but it causes you to look at it and think about it differently. So there are a lot of common metaphors, and in the book he walks through those. I want to give you one example historically, and by the way, as will happen in this video, if you're still watching, stay with me because I will give you 5 very practical ideas on how you can use this concept to be a better observer, to notice things that others miss, to be that effective literal and figurative treasure hunter and problem solver and lifelong learner. So stay with me. We will get to those 5. But I want to give you a classic example, one that stuck with me. It goes to JFK. So when John F. Kennedy was president, he gave a famous speech. And it launched a 10-year journey or quest for the nation. The speech was about sending a man to the moon and bringing him back safely by the end of the decade. And he charged the nation to rally the resources and get the scientists and the others and engineers and designers together in order to make this happen. So he put a charge out there to the nation, and people took risks, and some even lost their lives in the process of these experiments and these efforts and these attempts. But it happened. I guess there are some people out there who think it didn't happen, but I'll work from the assumption that it happened. And I've gone back and I've looked at his speech, and I've noticed that he used a very powerful metaphor that resonates with the American mind, with our sort of historical mind. And while some people today critique this metaphor and they see negatives about it, it's something that goes pretty deep into American culture and the American mind. So I've pulled out 5 quotes. He started early on, he said, "We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained." So notice what he did here. Sending a man to the moon was like setting sail on the sea. It was like the discovery of the Americas. It was like Columbus. Now, I'm not going into all of the different, interpretations of what his intent was and where he landed and all those different kinds of things. But this idea of setting sail and going on a voyage to an unknown place yet to be discovered. And that is the metaphor that he drew forward in his speech to try to inspire people. And then he said that he used another one that's kind of related but different. Instead of sailing, he used a different kind of journey. He wrote, "Space is there, and we're going to climb it." Like climbing a mountain, climbing, Mount Everest or something like that. So it is this adventure, this grand adventure into the unknown through difficulty, through trial, crossing the ocean, climbing the mountain. And he said, this country was not built by those who waited and rested. And so here he switches metaphors a little bit, and he talks about building something, but and the motivation. So here it's like, we've gone on the journey, we arrived, and once we arrived, we built something. So you could say that it's kind of part of the story. And then a fourth quote, "We choose to go to the moon, not because they are easy, but because they're hard." And so he acknowledges as part of this metaphor that the voyage, the journey, the climbing, the quest is difficult, but the destination makes it important. And then he does actually use another kind of metaphor that we could argue is some people would have challenges with today. The fifth one is, its conquest deserves the best of all mankind. So he, again, describes this idea of almost like a treasure hunt you could think of, or a conquest, a search for gold, or search for a discovery of something that's yet to be discovered. So you notice how he uses some closely connected metaphors, and he layers them together to inspire people, and it worked. It stuck. Of course, it came from a powerful person, the President of the United States, but it stuck. And that's how metaphors work. So here's what I want to do. Let's talk about now, how do we use metaphor in this concept to be better, clearer thinkers, to be those metaphorical and literal treasure hunters. And here are 5 items, as I usually do, that I've jotted down for you to consider. The first one is, when you're dealing with a problem you're trying to solve, or if you are on a literal treasure hunt, or you're trying to discover a truth and there are conversations happening about it, pay attention to the predominant metaphor or metaphors. So what are the metaphors that are being used? And that can help you it can help you kind of have an outsider and insider view of it, because each metaphor sort of causes you to look at things in a certain way. Now, if it's an actual treasure hunt, or you're trying to solve something that someone else designed or created, they probably were inspired by one or more metaphors. So paying attention to the metaphor can give you some structure about how maybe they were thinking. Doesn't mean people mix metaphors all the time, so it doesn't mean they're staying exactly on a single precise metaphor. Just like the JFK speech, he kind of played around with a few different ones, but they're all sort of tied together. So the first one is, pause and ask the question, what is the metaphor, or what are the predominant metaphors being used? The second one is this. Map out in your own mind, kind of pay attention to, how does this metaphor or these metaphors work on me? So once you've named it, once you've identified the predominant metaphor or metaphors, how do they cause you to think about it similarly or different? When you use that metaphor, when you talk about it, how does it cause you to think about it? And if there's more than one metaphor, if you're using the second one, how does that cause you to think about it differently? What does it cause you to pay attention to and to ignore, to see or to miss? You see where we're going here? The third one then is use metaphors to build some curiosity and motivation for yourself. So sometimes when you're trying to solve a problem, or you're going on a literal and metaphorical treasure hunt, maybe there's no actual metaphor that's really given to you that's very strong, but you can use the metaphors that you know are particularly motivating for you to keep you going and keep you engaged when things are not going well. Find the ones. Maybe you're very competitive and you are an athlete and you like to use some kind of athletic metaphors or musical metaphors or something else. But find ones that sort of feed your motivation, keep you interested and engaged. And then if you get a little bit bored or disengaged, you can always kind of shift to a different one. With that in mind, let's go to the fourth one, which is experiment with swapping metaphors. And this is particularly helpful with problem solving and when you're trying to seek a truth and you've been going down a journey for a while and you feel like you're at a little bit of a dead end and you've kind of gone as far as you can. Notice journey. I'm using a metaphor right there. So then one of the things you can do is you can say, okay, what are 5 different metaphors that I could use to retell this story of this problem or this sort of journey toward this truth that I'm trying to go toward. Maybe it's no longer a journey. Maybe now I'm building something instead of going on a journey. Maybe it's a creative work that I'm doing. Maybe I'm composing something. Maybe so you can play around with different kinds of metaphors and see how that helps you look at it differently, see things differently. And if you switch metaphors and you go through 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, you will, and then you just document the things you learn from each metaphor. I have found myself in a problem where I'm trying to navigate a problem at work, and there's a predominant metaphor that everyone's using, and I write down all the lessons that we can learn and things we can observe, and then I will switch metaphors. I'll have a second page, another metaphor, I'll have a third page. By the time I'm done, I have 3 or 4 times as many insights as I did if I would have just stuck with the first metaphor. And useful insights, not just sort of made up, sort of imaginative stuff. And then the fifth one is this: build your mental metaphor toolbox. So kind of building upon the fourth one, we all kind of have our go-to metaphors. So start paying attention to and documenting the different metaphors that you see in life, not just in your problem solving or treasure hunting or truth seeking, but just everywhere. And start paying attention to the kinds that you use and the kind of metaphors that others use in their language, and write them down and make a list, and then start playing with them. And you can kind of roll them back into the fourth strategy. So the more you're aware of, the more you're going to be able to use them. And I think this could be a really powerful one. I'm grateful for George Lakoff's book, The Metaphors We Live By, that really got me thinking about metaphor in a new way. And also years ago, when I was working on my doctorate, I took a lot of classes on ethnographic research and qualitative research methodology. And I had a philosophy professor whose doctoral dissertation was specifically on the philosophy of time, the metaphors of time. It was a philosophy of time and the metaphors people use for time. And I had a very deep dive exploration for almost a full year as I interacted with them during the class and then afterward. And so this is something I've been thinking about for a very long time. And I hope you found something in here that you consider to be useful as well. As always, if you have any comments or questions, I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.